Most men who take creatine think they know what it does. They've been told the story. It pulls water into your muscle cells. It helps you squeeze out a few extra reps. It adds a bit of size and strength over time. And that story is true, as far as it goes. But it stops about halfway through a much bigger picture. Because in the last few years, the research on creatine has expanded into territory that has almost nothing to do with the gym. And what's emerging is genuinely interesting, in a way that most supplement science never is. To understand why creatine is having this second moment, you need to understand what creatine actually is at a biological level. Not what it does in a marketing sense, but what it actually does inside your cells. Creatine is not a foreign substance. Your body makes it naturally, in your liver and kidneys, from amino acids. It's then transported through the bloodstream and stored primarily in muscle tissue in the form of phosphocreatine. When your muscles need to produce energy quickly, during a heavy lift, a sprint, any kind of high-intensity effort, phosphocreatine donates a phosphate group to ADP to rapidly regenerate ATP, which is the actual energy currency your cells run on. Creatine is essentially a fast recharge system for the most immediately available form of energy in your body. That's why it works so well for strength and power output. It's not stimulating anything. It's not forcing your body to do something unnatural. It's just providing more of a compound your system already relies on. Now here's where it gets interesting. Your muscles are not the only tissue in your body with high, continuous energy demands. Your brain accounts for only about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of your total resting energy. It runs almost entirely on ATP, around the clock, even while you sleep. And it also stores and uses creatine, just in smaller amounts than muscle, and with a significantly harder time getting supplemental creatine across the blood-brain barrier. That barrier is protective but restrictive. It controls very carefully what gets into the brain, and creatine doesn't cross it easily. That difficulty of crossing the blood-brain barrier has actually been one of the central challenges in the research on creatine and cognitive function. For a long time, the assumption was that standard supplementation doses, the 3 to 5 grams a day that most people take, weren't moving the needle significantly when it came to brain creatine levels, even if they were reliably saturating muscle tissue. Some of the newer research has started to complicate that picture. Studies using brain imaging techniques have shown that creatine supplementation can increase brain creatine stores, though the process is slower than it is in muscle and appears to require consistent supplementation over weeks rather than days. The implication is that if you're taking creatine only for the gym and planning to cycle on and off it, you may never be in the regime where your brain is actually benefiting. What does the cognitive research actually show? This is where I want to be precise, because this is a space where there's a large gap between what the evidence says and what a lot of online content claims. The clearest and most consistent finding is for sleep deprivation. A study published in Scientific Reports showed that a high dose of creatine, taken during sleep deprivation, reduced the cognitive impairment that normally comes with being under-rested, measured through actual brain scans and cognitive performance tests, not just self-reported focus. The mechanism makes sense. Sleep deprivation depletes brain energy reserves, and creatine helps maintain phosphocreatine availability when those reserves are under pressure. For men who train hard and don't always get ideal sleep, that's a specific, real-world scenario where creatine appears to offer something concrete. The more general cognitive benefits, improvements in memory, attention, information processing speed, have some research support, but it's more complicated. A 2024 meta-analysis across multiple randomized controlled trials found evidence of modest positive effects in those domains in healthy adults. However, a subsequent review, published in early 2026 in Frontiers in Nutrition, flagged some methodological issues with how those outcomes were pooled, and the European Food Safety Authority reached a similar conclusion. The picture is promising, but not yet clean enough to be definitive. The honest summary is that the signal is there. It's not invented. But the effect sizes in healthy young adults are modest, and the research base is still developing. This is not a nootropic miracle. It is a compound with a plausible biological mechanism for cognitive benefit that is being actively studied at a serious scientific level. Where the evidence is more compelling is in older populations and under conditions of metabolic stress. Creatine levels in the brain appear to decline with age. A 2026 systematic review in Nutrition Reviews, looking specifically at older adults, found that creatine supplementation was associated with measurable cognitive benefits in generally healthy people over 55. A pilot study at the University of Kansas Medical Center went further, testing creatine in patients with Alzheimer's disease, a condition characterized specifically by impaired brain energy metabolism, and saw improvements in working memory and executive function, alongside an 11% increase in measurable brain creatine levels. It's a small study with real limitations, but it was the first of its kind, and it's opened a serious research direction. The reason all of this matters for the conversation around muscle and men's health specifically is that the supplements most people take are built around a single goal: today's performance. Take this to lift more, take that to recover faster. Creatine is increasingly looking like something different, a compound that serves the body's energy systems in multiple places simultaneously, with benefits that compound over time and that extend well beyond the gym floor. That's a different kind of value proposition, and it's one that the research is starting to back up rather than just the marketing. There's also the matter of dosing, which is worth addressing directly because it's where most people are probably getting it wrong if their goal extends beyond basic muscle performance. The standard 3 to 5 grams per day protocol was developed and validated specifically for muscle creatine saturation. Muscle tissue has what researchers describe as an essentially open-door policy for creatine. It gets in readily and saturates relatively quickly at that dose. The brain is different. The creatine transporter in the blood-brain barrier operates near capacity, meaning that getting meaningful amounts of creatine into brain tissue requires higher concentrations over a longer, sustained period. Research exploring cognitive benefits has generally used doses in the range of 10 grams per day, and some protocols have gone higher. The cognitive effects, when they appear, tend to show up after 4 to 6 weeks of consistent supplementation at those levels, not a week in. For most people, that information alone changes how they'd think about their creatine routine. 5 grams a day is a muscle supplement. 10 grams a day, sustained over months, may be something closer to a long-term brain health strategy. That's a different conversation entirely, and it's one that the fitness world is only just starting to have. What about the form? This is an area where the marketing has genuinely gotten ahead of the science. Creatine hydrochloride, liquid creatine, buffered creatine, creatine with various delivery system claims. All of them have been aggressively marketed as superior to standard creatine monohydrate. The research doesn't support that. Creatine monohydrate remains the most studied, most validated, and most cost-effective form across both muscle and brain applications. The fancy alternatives have consistently failed to demonstrate meaningful advantages in head-to-head comparisons. If anything, some of them deliver less creatine per gram by weight. Plain creatine monohydrate is not exciting. It's also what the evidence points to. The broader arc of creatine's story is actually a useful template for thinking about supplements generally. It started as a niche product used by strength athletes and bodybuilders in the early 90s. It got extensively researched, over 1,000 human clinical trials at this point, which makes it one of the most studied dietary supplements in existence. That research confirmed the original athletic benefits, and then started revealing things nobody initially expected. Effects on bone density, on mood in certain populations, on recovery from concussion, on energy metabolism in aging and diseased brain tissue. It didn't start as a brain supplement. The biology didn't care about the category it was filed under. It just does what it does. And the research gradually caught up to the full picture. That full picture is still being written. What's already clear is that if you're taking creatine only because someone told you it helps in the gym, you have a reasonably incomplete understanding of what you're actually putting in your body, and possibly a suboptimal approach to dosing it. That's not a criticism. The information hasn't been easy to find until recently, but it's worth having.